All right. So, all right. So plan for today is just to do lesson 8 from the current unit, which is one of the single challenge lessons. And it should be pretty easy to get it done even in this short period. And let me quick double check how long we're here till. We are 10:55. Excellent. 1 hour should be plenty. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, we have our goal is here on bubble 1. I recommend having 2 tabs open so we can go back and forth. And here is what happens. Okay, so it's called the lock screen maker, but I don't really know how you would run a web optimized site as your lock screen. I don't know. Either way, it's going to give us an opportunity to work with. We don't need that. Our random situation, our loops, and our lists. Okay, so pardon the noise. The app. Hold on, I can get it off at least off the big screen. There we go. It has 3 different user inputs or events, okay, design elements, and they do different things. They randomize colors, like they say, the location of all the elements, and the actual icon image element. And we get one screen, and we get a bunch of elements that if you mouse over, you can see they are all called icon 0 through icon 19. Right? Should give you a hint of how we're going to finish this, similar to the way we've done everything else in this unit. Okay, so let's take a look at what we actually get, which is those icons and those buttons and a list of strings, each of which is it's not really a URL, but it is what we could use as, or will use as, the setting the image property of the different elements. And so set image property is obviously how we're going to change shapes. And then there are changing the XY location and changing the colors. Where, hold on, let's see. Is shape supposed to go, or size supposed to go with shapes or location? Well, there's no way to know.
Students going on the field trip to Ford's Theater with Ms. Waltz, Mr. Gibb, and Mr. Landau should report to the cafeteria at this time.
Lovely. Okay, so it's actually kind of hard to tell if the size randomness is with, I guess it's with shapes, although it could be with the location. Location might make more sense. Well, we do kind of need to decide. The location might make more sense because location and size are similar property situations. Although it does kind of make sense to go with shapes also. We'll put it with the location. And then colors, just looking at what we have, the background color is changing, and there's some other things that we will consider as we go. And so let's take a look and at our code. First thing I'm gonna do is throw some white space in there, text mode all the way through, and a comment. Please do not just in block mode just hit enter to make a new line. I think that looks horrible. Just have a bunch of semicolons. It takes 2 seconds to go into text mode, put a bunch of blank space, and then at the bottom put the a comment so that it actually creates the white space columns or white space blocks. And let's work through what we have. We have a list of icons. Is there anything else that we need to keep track of? And I don't think so. Okay, we're not doing a traversal of the different items in the list. We're not going to be at index 2 and do a right arrow and go to index 3 and so on. It's always just going to be picking one at random from the valid lists of indexes. And then, yeah, so that's that. So we really only have to worry about 3 different event handlers. And I'm not going to lead you the entire way through this. You don't need to bring them all at the same time, but just this is pretty much going to be the extent of our code. There's going to be obviously a bunch of stuff inside. So as far as solving the 3 different buttons, we kind of have to solve the shapes one first, because if we don't have shapes, it's going to be hard to figure out whether or not it's hard to debug the other ones if we don't have shapes chosen. So we will do the shapes button, and let's I'm going to give you a little bit of leeway. So first thing is, let's figure out how to, or you can try to figure out. First step is, let's pick an element at random from there, and then we will go over, and then I'll give you a chance to apply it to each one. So picking an element from a list at random, we've done a bunch of times. Let me see if I can pick out I mean, at this point, we really should be, it should be pretty straightforward how to pick an element from a list at random. Let's see if I can find a specific element here, or in our past, which is a good changing list. I just want to give you a resource and say, this is the lesson where we chose an element at random. Yeah, lesson 2 has some picking an element at random. What was the recent one? Like the font tester app? Is this the one with the random button? Yeah, so lesson 6, bubble 3 has some picking a random element from a provided list. So that would be a good place to check for our first challenge, which is to, I'll put some here, and I'm going to get rid of this so that we know what we're working on. And the challenge is pick an element from the list pick a random element. Okay, that is your first challenge. This is a sort of minute or so, sink or swim kind of thing. Like I said, lesson 6. Bubble 3 has some insight into how to pick an element at random. That is your first challenge for right now. The ID for the what? Shapes button. That's the one that we're working on. We're just solving, we got to solve these 3 different buttons one at a time. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So let's we could simplify this, but I want to do it all. I want to do it in 2 steps to show sort of the process. I'll instead of like trying to cram it all into one line or it could get lost. We want a random icon. Okay. And here we are looking for the actual icon, not just a random index, which also could be split into 2. So the icon is whatever's in the list at a valid random index that we choose. So we're actually looking for the item. So we're doing the name of the list, phrases at index. Remember, open close index is the in this case, the index we're looking at, where if we did rand icon gets phrase at index 0, we mean it's this one. But we don't want that. We want to pick one at random. So in this spot is where we put our random block. And the random range is always going to be between 0 and list.length -1. Phrases.length -1. Okay, we've done in the past where we've sort of spread it out a little bit by doing first rand index, having it choose the random valid index, and then setting rand icon to phrases at index, rand index. Okay, so this is the same thing as I had before, except why is that not working? Except that phrases hasn't been declared. Oh, is it called? Oh, it's called icon list. Excuse me. Phrases is from the other one. Oh, my mistake. I should have looked at that. The name of the list is called icon list. Phrases is from the other one. So here we're doing the same thing where we are just picking the random index first and then using it there, where we can cut out that step by just throwing it in the wow, why is everything going so slow? Throwing it in the index situation that way. Okay, so every time, let's go ahead and console log to make sure everything's working right. We're going to console log the result of rand icon, and it should print to the debug console the name of one of those image elements. Excellent. Okay, so this works. Next step is to set the image property to set the image property image property of each um, image to brand icon. Okay, a good place to figure this out is also lesson 6 bubble 3 has some good stuff there. And this is also like a 1 minute, 2 minute situation. Just to make sure we get it done, let's go minute 30 on this. And let's make sure we have everything. Okay. Okay, so the same thing that the other lessons have been doing, we're going to do the for loop trick with setting well, we want to do it 20 times. We want to do it to image or icon 0. It's important to know the actual name. Icon 0 through icon 19. So we'll do the set property for each of them with the trick setting the property of icon plus I. And for each of them, we want to set the image property. And the image we want to set it to is whatever we came up with for rand icon. I can get rid of this. Okay, making sure rand icon is not in quotes. It will not work. Okay. And I'm going to leave it like this, or I'll put it back here in a second. But because rand icon is just this, is being assigned this entire thing, and then we only use rand icon there, technically we could have just put this right there. And it still would work, probably. Okay, so that is the shapes button. And let's make sure. And we hit shapes. And it gives us one of the elements at random. Excellent. And yeah, I do think it is going to make sense to do the randomized size situation in our next one. Let's do locations next. And we'll go like that. Okay, so once again, we're going to need another event handler. The element we are solving now is the locations button. And we'll do it on click of that button. Okay, so what do we need to do? Do we need to pick anything else? Well, we want the randomness to happen to each of them. Here, we wanted the randomness to happen to each of them, but all the same randomness. And I think I pointed this out before. Because the random thing is selected before the loop runs, they're all going to get the same item, the same property chosen at random, but the same one. If you want them all to get different things, the randomness needs to be inside the loop. Okay, and because we want to do something to each of them, we will just put everything inside the loop, and we know it's 20 times, 20 times, and we need to set some properties. Okay, I'll give you more time for this, but think about going through here, which properties affect its location and which properties affect its size. We are doing both of those. Okay, so let's put I'll give you a goal for this few minutes head start. For each element, randomize size and location. Okay, hint, there are 2 properties for size and 2 properties for location. Okay, this might take you a little bit longer. Please give it a shot. Let's go like that. All right, so what do we need? Well, we need same basic setup for each element with a set property. But like I said, there are 4 properties that we need to deal with. We have its location is its X and Y position, and its size is its width and height. Okay, so we need a couple of things, and this is going to require some debugging, but let's figure this out. We will just do a rudimentary make something happen situation, and then we'll fix the individual things. So obviously we have 4 icon plus I, and it's we'll set its width to something random. We'll figure out figure out a good range shortly, and we can fix its, and well, we'll just do height and width first so that we can get a good range. So let's do height and width. Doesn't matter which one first. And we'll give it a random range. And let's see what's a good range by going into design mode. And this one already has a thing. So maybe 150 by 150 is the largest. That looks right. And I don't know, 35 maybe. So let's do random range from 35 to 150 for both. And let's see what happens and why it doesn't work, I think. Okay, we'll hit shapes, and they're all pretty small. Am I doing something wrong? Icon plus I. Let's see if we do 150, its width 150, but oh wait, it's not going to do that. Let's try 140 by 140. Right now I'm actually debugging it didn't break the way I thought it was going to. Set icon A. Oh, oh, that's why it's a locations button, of course. Okay, so that super helps. So we have our range of 35 to 150, which we like, but when we hit run, oh, okay. So here is another bug that I had forgotten. I was planning on saving this for the end. We don't know what the other ones are right away. If we change shapes, I guess that works. But if you recall from the first one, from the example, when you hit run, it does the equivalent of hitting all 3 buttons. How does it do that? Well, instead of putting everything inside the event handler, we can put everything that's inside this event handler into a function, call that function inside the event handler, but also call it at the beginning. So we are going to need to do this in order to get a full random when the program starts. Let's make some functions. How about I'm already using random a bunch of how about shapes? Go. And so we need the function definition, and then we're going to put everything inside of there. So let's go ahead and get a function definition. I don't know, shapes, go. They call it cap, double caps, single caps. And that is going to be the entire chunk that was inside the shapes button. And so we can call it right off the bat and then call it again anytime the user hits the shapes button. So at least now, right off the bat, we get something to work with. And let's go ahead. We know that's going to happen at some point. Let's go ahead and do it again for locations, since we know it's going to happen. How about locations, go. And so we're going to need a function definition for locations go. And don't worry, I'll give you a challenge in some space shortly. And inside of that is going to be whatever we were solving for locations. We just need to call it here also. Okay, so now whenever we hit run on the emulator, it's the same as if we hit all of the buttons. So that will save us some time. All right, so we are getting a relatively small size of our of image. And in fact, for the sake of debugging, I'm just going to choose one of the images to actually, that's not how you do that. No, we can just look at this. So if our goal was 150 by 150 as the largest one, and the problem is that if we hit run, you'll see none are near that size. And the reason is that the icons take the dimension of the smaller of those two, height and width. So if I randomly had height to the low end, but width to the high end of my random range, it takes the smaller one. The only way to guarantee our range matches is to make sure they get the same number. Okay, if we did 50 by 50, it would be that size. If we did the problem again, if we did 50 by, it's still the same size. So we need to get the same number to height and width property, but we want it to be random, and we want it to be random each time, but we want it to be the same. That should give you a hint that we need a variable to keep track of it. So let's call, I don't know, rand size is a good one. And we'll give it one of the random ranges, and then we'll use it to set the height and width locations. Okay, and now when we do, or not the height and width locations, the height and width of each icon, which we can prove works by setting them large. And it looks weird because they're all in a row, but this way they are getting the same number at random. And I do like 35 to 150 is fine. All right, and the problem of giving them a random location is the next step, and it's going to look a lot like it's the way we made a random size, just changing different properties. Ready, go. Sure. Let me take out some of the space. That is the extent of what we changed. The top view got when we got here. All right. So it's, like I said, the same basic idea. We are setting their random X and Y or their random location, which means we need to set the X property of each of them and the Y property of each of them. And we need a valid random range for them to jump to randomly. So we know that the width, this is from way back, the width of our emulator is hard-coded to 320 pixels wide and 0 on the left and 320 on the right. So our range of valid X is 0 to 320. And our range of valid Y is 0 to 450. Now, perhaps from my tone, you can tell that that's not going to work completely, but let's see what happens. Okay, so they are all over the place, and they also tend to shade to the right. Okay, there are two issues here. They are going too far down and too far to the right. Okay, this requires a little bit of insight to solve this problem, but it is like a 3-second solution. And we've done this before, trying to keep things on the screen instead of going outside the screen. The hint is that you need to change our random range to keep them on the screen, ready, go. All right, so think back to the way that we kept things on the screen. We know that, and this is a critical point. What's up?
I just add my subs. I can't, because it doesn't say.
So I don't know. Icon plus I. Scroll all the way up. No, I mean, scroll up to the top of that. Down a little bit. Down up to the top of that function. Lower, lower, lower. Up a little bit. Icon. Scroll down a little bit. Next part. Oh, you're trying to use I outside of the loop that you use I. This all is happening to each of them, so it needs to be inside the loop. All right, so we know that in any element on any screen, anything, its X and Y location is its top left corner. So in order to keep something on the screen, the left to right, this top corner, its range is going to be from 0, that's all the way to the left, and all the way to the right is 320 less its size. Okay, but its size is chosen at random. How do we know? Well, let's do minus rand size. That will keep it from going too far to the right. And the same thing for height, or excuse me, for its Y location, that will keep it going off of the bottom. Now, if we had a different random number for each of these, we wouldn't be able to access it. If we put our random range inside of where we're choosing the height and width, we wouldn't know what it was by the time we got to that. But putting it all in its own variable, we can use it there. Okay, this is going to need a little bit of fine tuning. And part of the problem, what am I doing wrong here? It still seems to be going off of the side, rand size. Why is it going off of the size? Off of the side. 320 minus rand size. Oh, I didn't switch it back to rand size. That's why. Rand size. There we go. That should work. It's doing what? Okay, so that is the next sort of fine tuning. And that is, we are using 450 minus its height as its location. If we don't want them to ever go below or onto the buttons, we need to use like 400 or 410 minus its height, or 425 minus its height. And that will change our low end range. Maybe 425. Let's see what that does. And it should run. There we go. And there, we've kept them all on the screen. Actually, we've got a couple going down towards the bottom. That's fine. The thing you'll notice is now they are pretty, yeah, they're pretty. They are pretty far from the edge. We've made sure that they don't go off of the edge. But if our goal was to get them closer to the edge, we need to change things. The thing to note is that the icons don't reach the edge of the image element. So in order to get them sort of closer to the edge, instead of having 0 be our X minimum random parameter, I don't know, that was so hard to say. We probably want negative something, although negative 20 looks good on this large icon, but if we go to a smaller icon, negative 20 is mostly off the screen. So maybe we can get a little bit closer to the edge by changing our X range from negative 10. And we want it, again, a little bit closer to the right, which means instead of having 320 minus its width, if we had 330 minus its width, it would use the entire left to right. Just how we would calculate, get it closer to the side, start with a larger number. And now the little ones still go off the edge a little bit, but I still like the spread a little bit better. And I don't want it to go any lower to cover the buttons, but I do want it to be a little higher. So let's do another like negative 10 for the Y property, because remember, just like the location of any element is its top left corner, Y equals 0 is the top, counting downward. So if we set it, our random range to, for the Y, negative 10 through whatever, it will have the possibility of having them jump to something like, well, closer to the top. So yeah, so that's what I have there. And we've got our random location situation spread out. Okay, last one. Last one is the colors button. So we need a new event handler, and we will do a new function to go with it. because this seems to be working, the putting it in a separate function definition so that it can be called right away. So we're going to need another event handler because it's a thing. And the event ID or the element ID is colors button. And let's go ahead and do colors go. Again, functions can be called anything meaningful and descriptive. And so we have our change colors function called right away. And anytime they click the colors button, now we just need to write that function. And I want to tidy this up. It bothers me. There we go. So let's write another function definition. We've already named it. It's called, I forgot, colors go. And we want to change all the colors. Okay, there's enough examples on the page to, or on this, in this program already for you to solve this. Go, change the colors and the background colors every time the button is clicked. Go for it. What's up? All right, so we have two things to deal with here. We know we want to do something to each element, so we're going to use a loop. We know we want it to happen 20 times. We want to do to each element. We need a set property. And the element we want to set a property of is all of them with our method of icon plus I, not icon plus one, an easy mistake to make. And what color do we, what do we want to change it to? We want to change its background color. Is that the right one? It should all turn red if we do this. Nope, it's not. There is no okay, so images don't, it's probably like icon color. Icon color. And there we go. Okay, so we need to set it to a random color. How do we do that? That's like you've either done it or you're waiting anyway. So how are we going to make it, each of them a random color? There. All right, so we've done this before, the RGB, and we want a random color, and they have, I guess, given us a hint that the only RGB block that they've given us is the RGBA, which you'll see why that's important in a second if we didn't have it. We want each element to get a random RGB, which is going to be the full randomness of red, which is 0 to 255. 0 to 255. And the full randomness for green, which I need to zoom out to even see it all. And the full randomness for blue. Now that I have that space, I'll go ahead. Now, be nice if you could slide around the area. So 0 to 255 for each of them. And I've taken away, just for the sake of example, the extra parameter, which is the alpha or transparency. And so that means if you don't have that fourth parameter, it's fully opaque, which if we had fully opaque, they sort of cover up each other, which that's not the worst thing ever. But I do think the example is designed to have us do partially transparent colors, which means that also just recalling, you can see how they didn't do their random range has that same lameness of having it all the way over. Either way, the example colors are clearly partially translucent. So that means essentially you don't have to do anything, because when you drag in the RGB A, it comes in with a value for alpha, which is 0.5. We could randomize that and have well, we actually couldn't randomize it easily, because the parameter is looking for a decimal between 0 and 1, and our random number function only gives out integers. We could pick out a random number 0 to 10 and then divide it by 10, and that would give us a decimal, but that's all a bit more than we need right now. But now it should do a thing. And the colors do a colors. We just need a background color. I'll give you a chance to do that on your own. We want a random background color every time we click and at the start. Ready, go. What's up?
Leslie, that marking value parameter is not string.
Is it outside of a loop? Outside of the loop, because if you're trying to use I as a part of the, well, I'm just guessing. Let me load yours up. I'm not looking at yours. I am. What is the error?
It says set property value. Value for not shared.
Set. I'm not getting, maybe I'm not even looking at yours yet. I'll help you debug in a second. Okay, so the background color is the same situation. We want a set property, but we don't need it to happen 20 times. I mean, it would work if we put it in there, but we only need it to happen once, every time it's called. So let's set the property of the element called home screen. Excellent name, home screen. The property we want, what is going on here? That's weird. What is happening? Is it, am I having a seizure? No. Why would it not let me choose a thing? I think I just need to refresh. That's probably the problem. What's that? Yeah, I think there's a couple bugs that are app lab bugs that I don't know why they happen, but either way, we are trying to, every time it's called, set the home screen's background color, and let's throw another random RGBA in there. So same basic idea, where just a quick trick, because it goes off the screen. If you put the random blocks in, like starting at blue, they go off the screen after you type them in, but I don't know. 0 to 255 and 0 to 255. You could spend some time refining the random color range to get something you like, but this is, again, just a technical challenge. And let's see what happens every time we click colors. It does a thing, and shapes does a thing, or locations and shapes does a thing. I kind of want a button that does all of them at the same time. No, I'll leave it like this. Wouldn't be that hard. We just put all the function calls in another function definition, call that at the beginning, and give whatever button I have invented its own event handler, which would be pretty easy to do, but we're not going to. So close to saying we're going to do it, but we're not going to. Okay, any questions? We can do some debugging here. I do want to end the video so it can start.